Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Today's upload is one that is going to terrify the folks that live in the city regions of our country and other countries alike. Before we get into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? Right, so when I say the word Dogman or cryptid and whatnot, the first thing that comes to mind is not automatically cities. It's usually forests, woods, wooded areas, fields, farms, whatnot. I've had a few experiences in and around cities. One in St. Louis that Victor shared with us. Gosh, I really can't even think of too many more. There's an old one from New York City back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And, just a couple here and there that I've remembered hearing. I do recall one on Vic Cundiff's channel that I believe it was in Compton. And I remember some people saying, no, it must not have happened. And, I heard it. And I totally believe that it did happen. One, because how these creatures use any kind of natural or man-made roadway, whether it be riverbeds, the side of a road, railroad tracks, pole lines, whatnot. These things are essentially a hunter of man. So, there are these inner kind of city experiences. And there's one a young kid, I forget exactly where. I think it was where the state that we are going to talk about, I believe it was in Ohio, where a young kid and his buddies used to hang out in some old, steel and coke plants and saw a massive Dogman. But when I do say Dogman, Cincinnati, Ohio is not gonna come. It's the Appalachia, land between the lakes, Michigan, Upper Peninsula, and state parks. Well, today's experience that I'm going to share with you is from Cincinnati, Ohio, the north side of Cincinnati, Ohio. And it's an industrial area where this occurred. And the gentleman that I spoke with believes that they did use the railroad tracks to go through this area and cause a shitload of havoc in 2005. And I know I've got a few subscribers that are from Cincinnati, Ohio. One I immediately think of, who is a truck driver, and he's been on a couple times, had some crazy experiences. But if you lived in Cincinnati, Ohio in 2005, you may remember some crazy baddie shit happening in the beginning of fall that year. So let's get into it. All right, so 2005, Cincinnati, Ohio, the north side. It's kind of an industrial part of town. And it all started out in an area. There's a baseball kind of fields called Salway Park, Salway Fields. And this actually was shared to me via a retired attorney who represented the family of one of the teenagers who had been killed on one of these nights where before these creatures had been taken out. A lot of the information that he shared with me was via discovery and information that he had heard firsthand through police officers and a few other people involved in the case. He no longer lives in Ohio. He's once again retired. And so a very kind of industrial part of town. And like I said, there's a baseball field called Salway Baseball Fields. And there's running from there, there's a creek. Now, to tell you how industrial this area is, the creek is called Mill Creek. And then across from the creek is the railway, another small drive, and then the major highway 75. So 2005, late September, and one night, it all starts out with one night, a group of kids are at Salway Park, and they're being kids, you know. They are smoking weed, drinking alcohol, not to an extent, because it's not like they're partying, you know. It's like a couple of beers out of their dad's fridge or something, you know. Not experimentation, but not really getting fucked up. So they're hanging out at the fields, and they want to go by the creek. Apparently there's a set of woods and then Mill Creek. They then start to walk around, looking around, just looking at the water. And one of the kids that's with the group instantly stops and kind of looks around. Everyone kind of notices it. There's a group of 4, and everyone notices him kind of acting funny. They don't really put 2 and 2 together to follow his eyes, but he immediately just takes off sprinting back the way they had just come. So now you've got 3 friends standing here wondering, hey, what the hell just happened? And they're looking around, and they look down towards the creek. They're looking around, and as they look further down, they see a set of red lights, reflective red lights. They resembled those reflectors on bicycles, the red ones. There's a set of 2. Rather large, rather high in the air. And then they see a couple of more sets behind it. And they notice that they are moving. And they are moving rapidly towards them. There is no noise. There's no wildlife noise. They can hear the creek. They don't hear any growl. They don't hear very much. They hear some scuffling of the grass and the reeds. And they immediately just take off and run for their lives. They do make it out. And all four, go home that night and are alive to this day. Now, one of the kids was pretty tight with his parents and had said something to his dad about the night, that prior night, hey, we were down by the park, went down by the creek, and we saw, some eye shine. There was, a couple of them. They were running towards us. We couldn't see what they were, but they looked rather big, Dad. I have no idea what it was. I don't think we're going to go back there for, a while. But I just wanted to, fill you in. Now, his dad was into the paranormal, into, ghosts and conspiracy or the truth and such. So he, takes his kid at his word. He wasn't, kind of put off like, oh, you were drinking and smoked up and blah, blah. Like most parents would, because as older adults, many of us forget about our childhood and forget about the strange things we had seen. He ends up going down and parking, daytime, obviously, and walks through the field. And he wants to just see if he can see any footprints. Because when his son said they were large and red eye shine, he's thinking, there's a multitude of things he's thinking. And YouTube wasn't even a thing at this point. So there wasn't, a shit ton of information. You had like Leonard Nimoy and some different here and there shows and such, but there were rumors and shared experiences of like the Goat Man was a big thing. Obviously Bigfoot, werewolves, Dogman, I don't believe was a key term at that point. So, he's like, wow, I want, my son said these things were pretty big, bigger than us. Maybe it was a Bigfoot. Maybe it was a Goat Man. So he goes down and he walks through the park and he's looking through the area. He's trying to see if he can see any kind of prints and whatnot. And he walks through the woods and he gets to where the creek is and he's looking around. But he notices kind of like a game trail of something made this kind of game trail where they were obviously large. And if you've walked through tall grass and reeds and such, it doesn't take years to make. You've got a few people or a few things even go through it and there will be a trail. So he's like, maybe this is what the kids were talking about. He sees kind of an old beer can tossed aside and he immediately knows, all right, I think this is where the kids were. And he kind of said it was that way. So I'm going to follow this game trail and see what we can find. Maybe I can find, some footprints or something. So he goes down and proceeds to walk and look for either, large hominid footprints, or possibly like hoof and clove goat man. And what he ends up seeing is a multitude sets of large canine prints. And he's looking, and he's kind of put off a little bit. He didn't grow up in this area. He moved to this area when he was older, before having a family, but he grew up in the woods kind of area of Ohio, hunting, fishing. His dad would take him hunting and this and that, but he moved to this area of Northside for the job. So he's kind of like, what the hell? These are large canine tracks. These are bigger than any canine I've ever seen. And they don't appear to be right. There doesn't appear to be, a set of 4. There's a set of 2. And, they're kind of fluctuating in where they're walking, almost in a pattern, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're just scattered, but not like they were packed animals. And he's like, what the fuck? He goes back to his house and calls one of his buddies, who is a police officer, and says, listen, my kid was down there. They were hanging out the other night, and and he calls this one police officer. They've been good friends for a while, so he knows he can trust them and such. But he wasn't throwing his kid under the bus. But he's like, listen, I just went down by the baseball fields and went down by the creek. The kids were down there the other night, and they said they had seen some pretty weird shit down there. Something large with possibly glowing red eyes. Maybe there were those kind of red flashlights. Who knows? I don't know. But what I just saw down there has got me on edge, because there's some very large canine prints. You can see the pads on their feet. You can see the claws digging into the ground. But these don't look like, they are walking how a normal canine would walk. And the police officer says, well, hey, I'm off duty here in a couple hours. Why don't you meet me down there and show me kind of where they are? So we did. And that's pretty much the start of the event that occurred. Now, this police officer is aware of, hey, there is something kind of weird happening down by the baseball fields and by the creek. I witnessed it firsthand. I saw evidence of something down that way. So he is aware of, hey, there is something kind of weird. Should I report this or what? Maybe there's, some wild dog kicking around, some large wild dog. Maybe I'll let, the game warden or animal control know of this. And he ends up talking to his higher up in the law enforcement department and says, hey, there's, some weird tracks down there. I saw them. Group of kids saw something, but these are some big dog prints down there. Should we tell, the dog control or animal control? And he's told to, do what you feel is best. There hasn't been any kind of report of any dogs in the area. So, just if you feel it necessary, do it. If you don't. And it kind of gets put on the shelf for a day or two because a couple of nights afterward, there's another group of kids who were friends with the initial four. And those four kids would not go to that area anymore, but they had been talking about it. And one of the friends had heard them talk about it and said, shit, let's go see what they found out. Let's go down at night and, see what we can see. So this group of kids, there's like probably about the same amount. It's an unknown number. It's not a lot, but it's, more than 2 or 3. Because once again, this is discovery and hearsay. So apparently they go down and they start to look around. And they don't see anything, They don't see anything at all. So they walk back up to the parking area. And as they're walking up through this parking area, one of the kids sees something running from the furthest ball field across this road into a cemetery. And the kid saw it, and he said to his friend, what the hell was that? And his friend had just barely caught the glimpse of the red eyeshine run. And they all kind of stand there and they're like, I don't know what it was, but I saw something. And didn't the other kids, our friends, say that there was red eyeshine or, red eyes? And strangely enough, where this thing ran out of that ball field, it ran into a small cemetery. There's a cemetery across from this ball field. Now, the group of kids are standing in this parking area, and they're looking into the cemetery, and they're waiting to see. They're kind of freaked out because they're high schoolers. They're more or less doing this to scare themselves and for kind of an adventure. These kids are not drinking. They're not there to, like the initial 4, to kind of just go down by the, ball field and smoke a couple joints and drink some beers. These kids had a goal. They wanted to see what their friends had seen. So they're freaked out. Their adrenaline is pumped. They've, got that natural kind of, oh shit, goosebumps and stuff. And they stand there for, 10, 15 minutes and don't see anything. They don't see one thing at all. So they're like, hey, let's get in the car and let's drive kind of over there and see, we'll kind of drive through it and see what we can see. So they start to drive, and one of the kids sees this red eyeshine off into the cemetery, and he says, holy shit, look at that. And as they're looking, they stopped. They haven't even crossed the road yet. They're looking right into the cemetery. As they're looking at this, their car literally just something like, almost like it got rear-ended and something got dropped on it all at once. From the backside of that car, ran right up and over it and down the other side, right, back of the car to the front. All they saw was this black thing. They could feel it, hear it, and stopped right in front of them. This huge quadruped dog. Its shoulders is as high as the nose of the car, and it just stares back at them and stands up and looks at the kids. And one of the kids had said that it almost looked like it smiled at us, or it was trying to intimidate us by showing us its teeth. So it then at that point does that and doesn't run across the road into the cemetery, just turns and walks bipedal into the cemetery. The kids are screaming to each other and like, holy shit, what was that? Oh my God. And they immediately just gun it and they're out of there. Apparently the driver of the car, there was some damage to the back of the car. And he told his mom what they had seen, and the mom had contacted law enforcement, and her words were, kids were down at the ball field. They heard, that some of their friends had seen something strange down there. And I think there's a bear down there because something ran right up my son's car, or my car. It was the mom's car. The kid was using it. Right up the back of the car and right over it. And there's some damage done to my vehicle. There's, some gouge marks. There's some scratch marks. And, the kid said it was huge. So I really think that there's a bear in this, kind of factory part of town, which is unheard of, police officers kind of not taking her serious. Like, are you drinking? And, all of this is getting documented. So discovery. Then at that point, she's like, no, I'm not drinking. My car is damaged. I'm letting you know because I've got to contact the insurance company and let them know something. Would you like to come over and take some photos of it? And that way, there's a report of this. Police officers are sent out and they go over and look at the car and they take some photos of the vehicle. And sure enough, there is damage done to the car. Excessive, it's not like 150, 180 pound guy just ran up the back of it. We're talking 400 or 500 pound creature with claws that 1, 2, 3 inches long, digging into this car as it runs over it. So now there is a police report on top of the initial, not really police report, but kind of a notice of, hey, there's something kind of weird going down there. Now you've got some police reports out there. Police decide, hey, there's kind of two notifications. There is a report and there is kind of an off books report of something down there. There is damage to this woman's car, and I think it would be in the best interest maybe to have some police presence down there, have some patrol cars kind of just cruise through. Don't make it your necessity of the evening, but roll around through there periodically and see if you see anything. And one of the kids that had been with the second batch of teenagers, that next night decides that he wants to go and figure out exactly what they had seen. And like I said, this is an industrial side of town. So apparently there are I guess what we would call them in upstate New York, because we have Glens Falls, New York is a kind of an industrial paper mill town. There's 3 paper mills here. And back in the day, there were factory houses or row houses where there would just be a row of housing for the workers to live. They had, they worked very hard. They could buy a house and live and raise their family and own a house, and, but they're side by side in, row houses. So the kid lives in one of these houses, and he decides that he's going to walk to the park and see. He's got to go past the cemetery, and he's got to go, down a couple roads and be at the ball field. Now, where he starts to walk out, he's walking across the street, and he's going to head for the cemetery. As he's walking across the street into the cemetery, he's just kind of crossing over. A patrol car drives by and sees him. They stop and talk with him and, hey, what are you doing down here? Because it's, 9, 10 o'clock at night. It's clear that he's a teenager. There's reports of something down here. You need to be careful. Why don't you go back home? And, they ask him his name or they recognize him. And it's not clear exactly how they knew who he was. So they proceed to drive away, and he kind of turns back around. They kind of detoured him a little bit from going the way he wanted to go. He watches them leave, obviously, and he heads back. Now, as he's walking through, he hits the cemetery, and he doesn't see anything, apparently, and he proceeds to keep walking. This is all speculation because he is no longer with us anymore. He is the teenager who this lawyer represented his family. Apparently, he had gone through the cemetery and proceeded to walk towards, like he's heading towards the baseball fields, but he's in the cemetery. Now, it takes him about 20 minutes to get from A to B. By that time, the patrol car has gone and did, its thing. It's now looped back around. It's gone through the baseball diamond area and kind of turned around. Proceeded to go through a couple of factory parking lots and such. As this police officer is turning around, from the last time this police officer had made contact with the teenager to right now is pure speculation. It is believed that he was ambushed as walking through the cemetery, because the police officer is heading back towards where he had just come from. So he would have to take, a straight line and whatever, go in this kind of loop area. As he's kind of coming back the way he came, what he sees is 2 large canine-like creatures run across the road from the cemetery into the ball field, and he stops immediately, and he's looking, turns his light on and spots them, and they are heading right towards that woods and toward the creek. As he's, watching that, he's like, what in the hell? And he's trying to fumble with his radio to let dispatch know, hey, I just saw 2 of these things. There is something down here. What he fails to see until it's in front of him, literally, he sees a large bipedal version of these creatures running across the road, and it is dragging the kid that he had just seen, but it's literally dragging him by his head. So it's got his head and he's just dragging it. The police officer couldn't tell if he was deceased or not, because, this thing's running with him. He's watching his legs, kind of bounce. He sees this and he just gets on the radio. I just saw this kid, da 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 da. I just saw one of these things. It's got the kid. What do you want me to do? I don't know there's no protocol for this. Instincts kick in. He notifies, hey, I need assistance now. Like, this kid is, there are monsters right here in front of me, and it just grabbed this kid. He loops it and slams into that baseball field area, into the parking area where he can park. He's got his cherries on. He's got his sirens on. His side mount light is on. And the last I need dispatch. I need assistance at the park, at Salway Park. We need fucking cops now. And he rips in, and he doesn't wait for backup. He runs out of his car, and all he has on him is his sidearm. He doesn't get his long rifle. He just gets that. It's out. He's running. And he's lost sight of the 3 creatures that he had just seen with the boy. He hits the woods, and that's when he realizes, I can't go any further. I'm at a complete disadvantage. And he backs out of the woods and heads back to his cruiser until more police officers show up. Finally, about 4 or 5 minutes later, 2 more patrol cars come, and they get out and they proceed to walk into the woods heading towards Mill Creek. They immediately run into the woods. They get to the creek area, and they hear growling and a lot of commotion and a lot of noise. What sounds like dogs fighting, essentially. They see the eye shine, and one of the officers, immediately, for some reason, starts to shoot and discharging his weapon at the area these creatures are at. They can see the red eye shine. The police officer that had seen the boy being dragged immediately yells, "Stop, we don't know where he is." So now they are trying to figure out, how are we going to get these things away from the kid? We need more police officers here. We need, let's get every available officer down here. So from the initial contact that police officer had with the teenager to when they recovered his body was about 45 minutes. It took roughly 30 minutes to get enough police officers down to that area to where they would, and that was Tigger opening the door, guys, where they would feel comfortable and not afraid to go into those woods, because they could see the fear on their fellow officer, and he's telling them what he had just seen. So now it's not some crazy woman and her teenage kid saying, "Hey, there's a fucking bear in here." or a friend of one of these police officers saying, hey, my kid saw some weird red eye shine and I saw some footprints and you saw them too now. But no, you've got a fellow officer saying, hey, there's, I just saw this kid who is 5 feet 10 inches getting literally dragged like it was nobody's business through the cemetery, out onto the road, into the ball field, and then into the woods. They get police officers down there, and they've got flashlights on them, and they see 4 or 5 of these things just kind of stand up, and there's kind of a standoff. They immediately make the decision. They obviously, command was, do you see the boy? No. Then fire. Shoot. So now this kind of standoff occurs. They shoot. They don't know how many shots. He doesn't know how many shots were fired. That was not in the discovery, nor was it given to him during the lawsuit. Shots are fired, and they end up taking off running down the side of the creek. They run up and find the boy. He's obviously deceased. No bullet wounds on his body, and very limited consumption, if any. Majority of it was like a mauling. Like he had stumbled upon them, scared them, or they just attacked him randomly, or that one just attacked him randomly. They bring his body out into the field, the parking area, because the coroner is not going to go into that area. Now they've got to figure out how to keep the public not knowing what's going on. Apparently what they did was they had said that one of these factories that use the railway, there was some sort of gas leak or chemical leak that happened, and for the next couple of days there's going to be, police presence, possibly, EPA, whatnot, which EPA wasn't there. It was just a smoke screen. And they then have to figure out what to do about these creatures that they saw. Apparently, the last anyone had seen of them was the following night. Now there's, like I said, a lot of police presence, and they then contact the U.S. government, probably Homeland Security. He doesn't know. He got hit with brick walls, and that's where we'll go into that in a second. So apparently the last time anyone had seen these creatures was the following day, on the opposite side of Mill Creek. There was a guy who was down on Canal Ridge Drive. He had been on the opposite side there. There's no reason why he was down there. He was just there. Maybe fishing, maybe whatever. There is no reason for him in the discovery why he was there. He was just there. And he had seen these creatures. He was apparently in his truck and seen 4 or 5 of these large kind of dog-like creatures come out of Mill Creek, opposite of the north side part there, and run west from the area, away from that part of town. Now, this is his speculation, that because this is all hearsay that he had heard or information from the discovery. Now, he believes that quite possibly they ran into Kentucky. The only other way they could have gone from that area would be either Kentucky or Indiana, following the railroad tracks. So where he then gets hit with the brick wall and where he gets involved is this family, this teenage boy's family, hears all of the information. They are told that he had, been attacked by some wild dog that were in the area. And, to keep everything quiet, we had let the public know that there was a chemical leak or a gas leak. And we feel terrible, but your kid shouldn't have been out there. Apparently he knew that these dogs were in the area, and he had been witness to them the night prior when that police report had been made. So we are not, responsible. And they got hit with that wall, They want answers, and they hire an attorney. The kid's dad hires an attorney, and it's this gentleman. And when he gets involved, he, then starts, filing motions and stuff like that to figure out what the cover-up is. What's going on? Give me some information. You need to compensate this family if you guys knew these wild dogs were roaming these railways and along the creek area and in the industrial part of town. You should have at least notified the public, especially since it's fall. Kids play at these parks, at the baseball parks, let these people know that, hey, there's a danger to the community. He's not thinking Dogman. He's not thinking, he doesn't know, because when he got this case, he got handed a blank sheet of paper, and this is what we know. Dogs. Our son is dead. These marks that are on his body at the funeral don't look like dog marks. They don't look like anything reasonable. He's pretty messed up. And that's when he starts, filing the motions and gets the information on this case and files a lawsuit. Immediately after the lawsuit is filed, his office is called. He gets the discovery. He gets some information in regards to the police reports, and then the paperwork stops coming. He's asked for, this, and that, and he's actually talking to some of the public. He's talking to some of the kids' friends. He talks to the mom of the initial kid that had the vehicle that had gotten ran over. So now he knows that, these weren't dogs, but what the hell are they? And the police must have known. Otherwise, why was there presence in the area? Police presence. He gets hit with from Homeland Security a kind of cease order to, stop looking into this. This is immediately, you need to stop immediately, and we will compensate the family. If you persist to, go any further with this, we will go further with you, and, we will fight to get your license taken away for you not to be, to be able to practice law. So, take the win and quietly go away. He notifies the family and says, hey, I have some weird information to share with you guys. But I'm told that this is the amount of money you're going to receive, and they are hitting me with everything they can to block any kind of information coming out to us. And it's not the Northside Police Department, the Cincinnati Police Department, but the Northside, and it's actually the government, United States government, and they're hitting me hard. The best I can say is take the money and, bury your son, move, whatever. But I can't go on any further. And I can't, if you don't take the money, I can't represent you. My best thing is to take the money. The family did take the bribe money, which, until you're in that predicament, I don't think anyone can say anything about it. You know what I mean? God forbid any of us were put in that position. What would we do? So it's a very, very traumatizing thing to have to deal with. He then talks to the gentleman who had seen them proceed down into the western part of town and out onto the railroad tracks. He talks to that guy and gets a description. These things were 5 feet at the shoulder when they ran. They actually didn't come bipedally out of that the creek. They came out like they had swam doggy paddle through the water, and once they got out, they proceeded to run quadruped. But as I looked a little further, I'm watching these things run, and it was almost like they were oblivious to me sitting in my truck watching them. Some ways down that railway track, a few of them stood bipedally and proceeded to kind of lead the others into the woods along the railroad and get out of Dodge, essentially. The family, that was the last he heard. He never shared that with the family. To this day, he wishes he had shared more information with the family. He doesn't know if it would have, done any good. He was getting hit with everything, stop talking about it, stop looking into it, just shut up, take the money. And so now, I've had a few different people be bought off by the government. And I'm wondering, you've got Jesse. There was some compensation, but not a lot. You've got the gentleman who his dad had gotten attacked while hunting, who was compensated quite handsomely. So how many times has these attacks occurred to where some family needs to be compensated for the death of a family member and ill public service by the police department and or mayor's office or whatnot, and then the feds. Just a terrifying experience, and a small part of Cincinnati, Ohio, an industrial part of this. And you got to think where Kentucky is into relation with Ohio. It'd be very easy for them to escape. Being hunted by whoever, especially on the tracks and running at night. So anyway, with that, I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. It is, after all, your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.